Welcome back, everyone. Let us now go to the next session of the day entitled 5 Lessons of Resiliency and How Exponential Technologies are Transforming Business and Society. Joining me in welcoming back Gopi Ganesalingam, the Vice President, Tech Ecosystems and Globalisation, Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, as he introduces us to the speaker lineup we have for this session. Therefore, over to you, Gopi.
Good day, everyone, and this is Gopi once again. I appreciate all of you for attending today's sessions. We have gathered a huge traction since this morning, and I say a big thank you to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, undeniably, technology is changing the very fabric of our society. We are experiencing digital transformation that has fundamentally altered the way we live, the way we work, and the way we relate to one another. In almost every domain, we are witnessing digital technologies driving economic growth and inclusion, empowering individuals, sparking innovation and entrepreneurship, improving healthcare outcomes for all, and enabling crucial changes in our ability to tackle shared societal challenges. The way we live has changed, and it continues to change very, very fast. In this scale, scope, and complexity, the speed of current breakthroughs is unlike anything or anyone of us here have ever experienced before. The possibilities seem to be limited only by our imagination. So when compared with the previous digital revolution, the current fourth IR revolution is evolving at an unprecedented rate rather than a linear pace. The breadth and the depth of these changes, characterized by a fusion of technologies, is blurring the lines between the physical and digital worlds. As one of the most developed digital economies in the region, Malaysia is home to a growing number of tech companies at the forefront of transforming the strategic landscape for all industries in Southeast Asia and beyond. Technological strength of speed, accuracy, predictive capabilities, and scalabilities. Human strength, on the other hand, are creativity, agility, resilience, judgment, and leadership abilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very proud and extremely excited to share this platform with some of our very own Malaysian tech companies who have managed to find ways to balance these two sets of abilities, pursue new heights of innovation during times of rapid change, and multiply their businesses into new services. Without further delay, let's hear it from the Malaysian tech leaders who will be sharing on how they are driving purpose to technology, creating positive outcomes to the wider world. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from Aerodyne, top-tier global drone services company with presence in 35 countries, using AI for large-scale data operations, analytics, and process automation. Blinkware has been using AI and machine learning to a wide range of industries, from gesture control and facial recognition to detection technologies. Inmagine, which is using the proprietary software AI Brain to enable content designers to focus on content creation, design faster, and achieve bigger creative goals in the shortest time. LGMS, one of the key players for cybersecurity services. And last but definitely not least, MDT. Focusing on IoT as a service, MDT has tremendous growth in key domains such as crowd movement, asset management, fintech enablement. I can assure you that these entrepreneurs who have found breakthrough digital disruption platforms and who are conquering the world right here from Malaysia will keep you glued to your screens. Thank you and do enjoy the sessions ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Kamarul. I'm the founder and CEO of Aerodyne Group. We are one of the leading DT3, which is drone tech, data tech, and digital transformation company globally. We are ranked second in the world by Drone Industry Insights. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about aerial robotics, the future of aerial robots. Basically, let's pause for a while and think, how do large organizations manage their critical assets, such as power line, highways, rail tracks that are spread over hundreds or thousands of kilometers effectively? How about telecommunication infrastructures? What about your sovereign borders of every countries in the world? What about managing security sensitive areas such as oil and gas facilities, police or military base, airports, and so on, which are constantly under threat? What about plantation industries, where there are typically thousands or hundreds of thousands of hectares in size? They all have one thing in common. All of these assets, all of these facilities, all large areas, they're all scattered over large geographical areas. And most importantly, they have significant negative impact in terms of failures in managing those facilities. So these are actually the problem statements that we look at using our technology. How can we solve this one big problem, which is managing large geographical areas, mission critical in nature, and spread over very, very large areas. Now, let's take a look at how it is typically managed today. Number one, let's look at the common grounds to all of this issue. Number one, all of them means that any inefficiencies will lead to rising costs. When you run your critical infrastructure, if you do not manage them well, costs are rising. In fact, that's true in nature as well. Around the world, costs in managing these assets are rising year in and year out. Most of them are also mission critical, where failures are costly. In terms of power line, it could lead to hundreds of millions of billions in economic impact. Imagine the failure of any national power grid. And this is not a new thing. It has happened before in America. It has happened before in Malaysia, right? So these are, again, critical assets. What about communication failures? Today, all of us cannot live without our phones, right? What will happen if we have communication failures, if all of these assets are not managed well? What about our borders? Encroachments will lead to billions of loss in terms of revenue to any countries. Threat to national security. Today we are having a pandemic, COVID pandemic. This can also flow through these borders. So managing one's border is always top of a priority for any nation, right? So again, let's look at all of these items, right? What about agriculture? If we were to go back to Malaysia alone, where I'm from, 10 billion in terms of revenue is lost due to labor crunch in 2021 alone in the palm industry. So those are, again, if I were to summarize, non-compliance or inefficiencies are very costly. They are all mission critical. How can technology help solve all of these problems? Now, let us think, what if we can automate all of this process using aerial robots? And actually, to be honest, it is no longer what if. This is something that we are already doing. We are already using, doing all of this, the one that I mentioned above, from power line to communication, to managing the national borders and all that, to managing agriculture. It is already being done by our company in a large scale, not just in Malaysia, but also in 35 other countries around the world. It has not always been here. Our Aerodyne is a 7-year-old company. We have gone through a very long process in order to bring these solutions to the market. Some of the earlier challenges, some of the earlier misconceptions were people were thinking that, hey, perhaps these drones are really just toys. It's either they are toys or they are expensive military drones. And there's always talk about how it is dangerous and how it is a threat to privacy. There's always concerns about whether they are reliable, and it's a safety risk as well, especially when you're flying in the urban area. Basically, in the past, there's always a question whether these drones are really ready for commercial operations. So how do we solve them, right? Especially we're trying to introduce something new to the market. Aerodyne's philosophy is actually about advancing humanity through drone intelligence, addressing all those issues that I talked about earlier. So if we think about it, what is the reason for this technology? Number one is actually about providing solutions to all of those problems. In order to solve those problems, we need to provide solutions that make business sense. In other words, these are digital transformation process. If you like, what we provide is almost digital transformation in the box, or a catalyst for a transformation process or a digital transformation activities within an organization itself. So what do you need? how do we solve them? So we actually provide those solutions, what we call solutions that is faster, better, cheaper, and safer for our clients. If you were to look back about some of the early problems here, some of the concerns were that this is not ready for commercial operation. But we've already addressed them. We have been able to show that when we look after, for example, plantation, we are already able to increase the productivity by 300%. When we do at power line, we are able to accelerate the process by 4 times faster as well. So these are all proven values that allow for the adoptions to happen over time, right? So another concerns about reliability, safety risks, and all that are all being addressed by compliance to individual regulatory requirements. It is also being addressed by track records. If you have done a similar example in one country and you can do it again into a different country as well, all of this leads to the comfort and confidence by this large organization to adopt this new technology. So typically, people are afraid of new things, people are afraid of change, but it is through proven solutions that the adoption rate can be improved. So this is actually a very interesting time for the future of aerial robots. If I were to look back into how the industry has changed, drone industry sort of started more or less around 10 years ago. At that time, drones are really aerial visual capture device, nothing more than that. So we have seen from visual, it has moved to data, to enterprise solutions. And today, really, we can already think of a drone as change agent for digital transformation in large or rather in any enterprise environment. Future will be even more exciting. Future drones will be fully autonomous. Future drones are mission-driven. Future drones will be using next-generation AI. Future drones will even provide the intervention to the problems that they find on the field itself. So that's actually how the trend that we are seeing as well. So today, those drones are already smart, but at Aerodyne, we are already developing autonomous swarm intelligence, that in the future, what you do is really just to set up these drones, place them on site. We do not need to actually control them. We just give them mission objectives, and these smart future aerial robots will take care of our facilities, will take care of our land, will take care of our borders, almost fully autonomous. And of course, the ultimate directions, the ultimate vision is for it to be able to do this without much human intervention. We will only get the intelligence that we need. We will still be making the key decisions about how they will do the intervention. Basically, it's stuff of science fiction, and this is already happening around the world. The future is exciting, the future is real, and the future of drones in advancing humanity through intelligence is coming very, very soon. Aerodyne have a virtual booth at Malaysia TechMan 2020 platform, and I would encourage all of you to actually drop by at our booth and see what I was talking about, and you can find out more information at our booth as well. Thank you very much.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for your time today. A big thank you to MDEC for having me participate in this Malaysian Technology Week 2021. My name is Alvin, and I'm the founder of Blinkware and also the group CEO of Blinkware Technology. A little bit about myself. Grew up in Australia, was born there. Then I moved back to Malaysia. I was then part of banking for many years in Citigroup as well as UOB Bank. And after many years of working there, I decided, it's time for me to do something for myself. Started this company called Blinkware Technology, which I'm going to share a little bit more about in this presentation later on. So really excited, really excited to share about what we're doing and also how big this space of AI we're talking about and what it is impacting in society. So as I shared, the presentation is going to touch on certain topics that Blinkware has addressed and is continuing to embark upon. And number one is really how we pivoted as a company to be a society-centric technology company, right? And how you also can learn from that to be able to build a technology that really impacts society. And that leads on to the second part, which is how AI is impacting society and how we as technology developers and technology innovators has a role to play with that, all right? So I think further ado, I'm just gonna go straight into it and we can get started on this presentation. just gonna share the screen out. Okay. So the topic of what we're talking about today under Blinkware's presentation is the area of how AI is impacting society. And I thought that what better to share and to title this as Saving Lives Through Advanced AI Technology. So a little bit about Blinkware technology. We were established in August 2013. And we are really pioneering and developing advanced AI software with really key strengths in image processing as well as vision technology. We address a lot of the issues of high cost, expensive technology, expensive hardware. And that's one of the attributes that Blinkware really has, is to create software that has the ability to be affordable and also mass adoption across multiple different types of sectors and countries as well, right? So over the years, we have been quite successful in not just clients, but also accolades and rewards. Most recent is really the best AI company in Asia Pacific that we were recognized for in 2018. And as we progressed as a company, obviously patents were very important to us in securing our IP, and we have already secured 8 international patents. So that allows us really to build technology that's protected as well as technology that's advancing as well. So one of the areas that I was asked to talk about is really the evolution of, how did you move from manufacturing and how did you move from certain areas where it's so totally different, but yet it seems as though, it makes sense to move that way, right? So I'm going to share a little bit about our journey. Starting really in 2013, we started as an interactive technology company, right? We were pioneering in the areas of AR, VR, motion, gesture, facial recognition technology. And we were rolling out for events and exhibitions, and we were doing a lot of the smaller types of projects, which were quite repetitive, but yet took very long in terms of gestation to get these projects out. So at that time, we were actually developing software that works on 2D cameras. It started with Connect, which is a 3D camera that is able to do vision imaging. And we converted that over to be a 2D camera, so it's affordable. And at that point in time, we didn't know we were actually dabbling in the area of what we call AI, right? It was, we called it, vision imaging, we called it, image processing, but we didn't understand it to be really AI at that point in time, or machine learning, or what is now deep learning. So we developed technology that does facial recognition in 2013. We were the pioneers, one of the pioneers in Malaysia, where we were able to map about 256 points on the face accurately. And it's not just for facial recognition, but we used it for gamification, which was quite exciting. And as we started moving to that space more and more, it turned into more of a surveillance type of technology. But as we move further into the pipeline, into the growth of the business, one of the areas that we started to see major growth was automation, and what we call Industry 4.0 now. And in 2016, we were actually approached by several manufacturers, large global manufacturers that said, are you guys able to customize technology for us to do visual inspection and quality control on our factory floors and our supply chain? And I asked them, I said, look, you guys obviously should be using 3D machine vision cameras. Why look for Blinkware? And they said, the cost of implementation is very, very expensive, and it's not integrated into our supply chain. We either have to buy the entire conveyor system with the cameras and the whole software, which is very expensive. And we heard a lot about what Blinkware was doing on facial recognition, and we thought, is there a possibility that you could convert some of that technology to do visual inspection? And so much so, we actually started to pivot and started to create technology specifically for automation, right? And we enhanced our software, our algorithms, and that was really the first time we started to move into machine learning and really understand AI. So we were able to successfully complete a project for a Japanese car manufacturer to use our technology in their supply chain to be able to detect defects across 17 different types of defects, from porosity to rust to hairline fractures to cracks, multiple things with a very, very high accuracy. And we were training multiple different images to be able to do that. And that technology then expanded into FMCG. It moved across to different types of manufacturing sectors. And we were doing very well because we were one of the very few companies in Malaysia that was able to customize technology to that level of accuracy. And that's where we really dabbled into, efficiency, we dabbled into workflow, we dabbled into integration, and understood that technology like this is going to create efficiencies overall in the industry. And what happened around 2018, we were approached by doctors in Royal Adelaide Hospital in Australia. And they were actually dentists, and they spoke to me in regards to creating a technology that allows them to identify cavities and anomalies on their x-rays very, very fast. They saw what we were doing in terms of machines and manufacturing and automation, and they said, are you able to convert that type of algorithm to be able to do the same thing for chest x-rays and for, we call it OPGs, which is basically x-rays for your teeth. And so we said, why don't you give us some data sets and just send it over to us and we do some learning. So within 2 to 3 months time, we were able to actually identify very clearly cavities and anomalies on teeth that were labeled by the dentist to be able to allow them to speed up the entire process of identifying these or diagnosing these issues. And around that period of time, we were still working on more advanced technology in the medical field in regards to chest x-rays. And in 2019, COVID-19 hit Malaysia and the world quite heavily. And we thought to ourselves, look, why can't we then start looking more into this area of image processing, image recognition, and we put a team behind this, and we created what we call AirScan. And AirScan is basically an enhanced version of what AirInspect, which is for the automation system, does. But we're now looking at different types of X-rays and different types of segmentation within the human body. So we worked closely with MOSTI, and we're one of the preferred partners that was selected under the NTIS to pursue this development even further. And they said to us, look, instead of just looking for COVID-19, which is a pneumonia type of disease, are you able to look at other diseases that you can find in the chest X-ray? And so we started to study more, working with doctors in Malaysia, getting data sets from hospitals in Malaysia as well as in China at that point in time. And we were able to identify 6 chronic diseases within chest X-rays with a turnaround time of about 1.5 seconds to identify and come up with a report in about 3 seconds. So the end-to-end process is about 4 seconds, right? And what takes a radiologist about 15 minutes to do this diagnosis, we're doing it all in about 4 to 5 seconds. Now, we're not here to challenge the radiologists or to replace radiologists, but we're creating workflow efficiency in radiology with the aim to do mass diagnosis so that multiple people can come and do testing and to be able to identify if they have a chronic illness or an illness at a very early stage. So that's how we transitioned from what we call interactive, dabbling with vision inspection, then moving into now what we call vision and image processing. It's actually a whole journey and a whole funnel of which created our mandate in Blinkware technology, which I'll share with you later on, and what we are achieving and what we are trying to achieve in Blinkware technology. So what do we really want to do with AI technology? And this is where I sat with the board of directors and I shared with them, my passion about what I see in technology, and we created this mandate, and that sets the foundation of everything that we do and everything that we want to create in regards to AI technology under the Blinkware group. And the mandate really is AI is at the core of everything that we do, but communities is really at our heart. We need to be able to create technology that's going to be highly impactful for society. And the 3 vision goals that we have, number 1, it's to reduce mortality rates by creating affordable mass early detection of diseases. And by doing this, you're able to save a lot more lives. You're going to see a lot more reduction of pain. You're going to see a lot more reduction of what we call it non-communicable diseases, which deliberates you from functioning and being productive at work. Many illnesses cause a lot of productivity issues. We want to resolve that. So a high impact area is to save lives and to give people a better living capability. Mitigate future pandemic outbreaks through advanced antibody sequencing. Now, COVID-19 hit us, and that was really a turning point even for our company itself. And that's where we started to really look into life sciences and medical technology. And what we're trying to do here is to be able to use AI technology to identify antibodies much faster, to be able to identify genome and DNA, RNA sequencing to identify if there's new viruses coming out. And if we're able to do that, we're going to be able to mitigate and also help governments and help countries manage the new variants or new viruses that's going to be coming out as a result of that. So if we can do that, that's going to be a huge impact to society. And the third one is really wealth distribution. So coming from Southeast Asia, we're seeing a huge discrepancy in wealth distribution, right? And wealth distribution in terms of the lower level incomes and also the unskilled workers. We're working very closely with the manufacturers here in Malaysia and even in Southeast Asia. And we're seeing that there's a huge hiring of factory workers, but they're not skilled. So the ability for them to earn additional income is very, very weak. So that creates that real issue in terms of wage discrepancy and also ability to increase wealth within that country itself. So these are three key mandates that we do build technology and found behind. So before I go into what's great about AI, is now the question of the misconception of AI and the worry that people have. We're watching so many movies that robots are going to take over us. We're so worried about, are we going to lose our jobs? I can tell you a situation where in one of the factories that we deployed our technology, the factory workers were so worried that they actually cut the power line to our computer system, and they took our systems and they stole our systems, and they're very worried not because they wanted to sell our systems, they're very concerned they're going to lose their jobs, right? And that's always on the minds of a lot of people, am I going to lose my job? Is it dangerous to empower systems to be so smart? Is it dangerous to have systems think better than humans, right? So there's a lot of worry and a lot of stigma around AI and the understanding of AI, and I'll address some of those issues in my next slide and how we see it and how our belief system is and what AI is going to be like for us in the future. So as I shared, contrary, AI is going to be a huge impact onto society and it's going to add great benefits, but it must have a positive impact on society. Right? You're going to see a lot of new AI systems coming out, not just in medical, not just in manufacturing, but across different types of sectors and technology, including fintech, blockchain, and those are things that's going to have a positive impact on society. So let me share with you, we're talking about reduced mortality rates by fast early detection. So what are the challenges that's being faced right now in society? Number one is this, and I talk about Australia now, is because Blinkware is going for an IPO on the Australian Stock Exchange. And a lot of our data is now supported from what we're doing in Australia. But I'm going to share the use cases in Australia to give you some idea of how we're resolving a lot of these issues. And it's not just Australia, it's actually globally that's having this problem. So increase in chronic diseases, 1 in 2 Australians have at least one chronic disease. And chronic diseases lead to death if it's not treated at an early stage or treated properly. Aging population, not just Australia, worldwide, there is an increase in the aging population. So in Australia, 75 to 85 age group is seeing the greatest increase annually in Australia. What does that mean? Is the more the older population is growing, the greater stress there is on the healthcare system, right? The more demand there is on the healthcare system to ensure that the elderly is looked after. So that's a huge strain. And if that's not mitigated and it's not looked into, the cost to the economy and the cost to the governments, it's going to be very hefty. So it has to be addressed. Workflow efficiency. Radiologists have seen an increase of overtime in Australia by 297% as of 2020. And that's also related to COVID as well. So what that basically means is the population of radiologists to the population of country humans or country population, there's a huge difference. So as a result of that, as the demand on radiology increases, the backlog starts. And the backlog starts, what happens is people are not getting their results fast enough and critical diseases are not being addressed quick enough because of that backlog. So that's a major society issue that we are really facing right now. And this is what Blinkware is doing to resolve that. So we created that software shared that's able to do detection in 1.5 seconds just using chest x-rays. By providing early detection, we are able to address diseases much earlier for immediate treatments, right? So right now, a doctor may even miss out a certain type of illness because there's just so many things they're looking at. An AI system like what we're building is able to even identify other diseases. So you're looking for a pneumonia, it may detect a tuberculosis, acute trauma, lung cancers, which they could miss out on. So it helps overall to identify much earlier if there is any potential diseases. Aging population, reducing the strain on healthcare. As we are moving towards more automated systems, turning around at 1.5 seconds, getting a patient out of the door within 10 minutes, right? Which usually takes an hour appointment. That means that the healthcare system is going to be more efficient, right? So creating technology to be automated creates efficiency in the entire ecosystem. Workflow efficiency, radiologists can turn around much, much faster, right? So the question always was, are radiologists going to lose their jobs? And I've spoken to many radiologists across not just Australia, Southeast Asia, and they said, we're not even worried about our jobs. In actual fact, AI can do everything that a radiologist is trained to do. And I agree with that, all right? So in that sense, they see this as a workflow tool to create greater efficiencies, allow them to focus on more critical work elements, while the mundane work, which is you got a normal lung versus you got an abnormal lung, is now run through an AI system. Preventive future and outbreaks and pandemics. So issues that they're facing right now, and a lot of the science labs and laboratories are facing this issue, it's that it's a very lengthy process to identify antibodies in DNA and RNA, right? It can take up to 10 years. So that's why you're looking for vaccines and FDA approvals. It takes so long. It's because just to work on that sequencing, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of data. So you see a lot of big, larger pharmaceuticals able to do that. But the smaller laboratories who have a lot of talent aren't able to do that because they can't fight in terms of the resource. So it takes a lot longer. New viruses. So huge amounts of viruses are being introduced. Pathogens are being introduced all the time, but scientists are taking a long time to identify them. So if you don't have a system that can identify viruses fast enough, you're going to hit a pandemic. And as a result of that, it's going to push the economy into a really depressive state because of the fact that viruses are not being addressed much, much earlier. Data efficiency, so much data is in the system right now for scientists. We hear this a lot from them, and we are working with an American company that's collaborating with Blinkware to build AI for antibody detection as well as DNA, RNA sequencing. So we're hearing that they have so much data, and we've seen so much data, but just don't know how to utilize it. So how are we helping in terms of society? By using AI, we created mathematical algorithms using deep learning and CNN. And we're able to do what they did in 10 years in about 1 year because of that ability to use high GPU and high computing system and power to be able to generate a lot more data. All right, so we're speeding up the ability to find antibodies. And what does that mean? We can come up with vaccines much faster. We can identify antibodies that can address even the variants of COVID-19 much, much faster. And pharmaceutical companies are really seeking for this type of technology. The biggest player right now in the market is DeepMinds under Google. They're spearheading and leading a lot of this technology as well. New viruses, right? So we're also using a lot of data labeling, 3D modeling, and we are able to find trends as well. Working closely with the scientists, the chemists, the biologists, the mathematicians, we are able to find formulas to identify new viruses, and churning it through our AI algorithms, we are able to quickly identify much faster certain trends, right? So that's going to help us in terms of addressing spreads of viruses. Data efficiency. So with our algorithms, we're also able to filter, label, and segment data much more effectively, which in turn means that they can use this type of data for further research and further study, so it's not wasted in any way. Wealth distribution. So we really want to improve living standards of low-skilled factory workers, which is a major backbone of many economies in Southeast Asia. So human dependent, as I shared with you, Southeast Asia is so dependent on unskilled workers. A lot of factory workers really are not trained or educated, so they come at a very low cost. Less than 37% of workers actually have training, factory workers. And of that, another 37% are wrongly trained. So they're not even trained in the right skill set. So it adds no value to what they're doing. Wealth inequality, 35% of Asia's wealth comes from the skilled workers, right? Which includes even factory workers. So if we can address those issues, we can actually give people a greater living standard. So what did we do with Blinkware? We automated a lot of the mundane work using AI so that a lot of these skilled workers don't need to be doing all the mundane things that a system can do. But in what they've actually done, and we've seen this in a lot of our clients, the workers are actually transferred to other areas where it's more human intensive. So for example, looking at a crack on a production line is so mundane, right? They were moved over to other areas where you actually need to do heavy lifting. You need to actually do proper factory work. So they were able to be transitioned. So nobody lost their job in actual fact. There's a lot more transitioning of roles as a result of automation into the factories. Lack of training. So part of what we do when we bring digitization into factories is they are trained as well. And how do they use the system? And because they train into new digital technology, they're also upskilling themselves. So that upskilling itself leads to the next thing, which is employability. So when they go for the next employment, they have the capability to tell the next employer, I've been exposed to AI. I've seen how automation works. I know how automation system works. I know how to mount a camera and get visual inspection happening. So we've seen that happen with the customers that we've had, and we've seen a lot more training happening as a result. And we want to do more of that across Southeast Asia by providing a platform for upskilling using AI technology. So where are we seeing AI moving towards, and what is the future of AI? And the word AI is so broadly used, but I've defined it more into 3 key areas. And the first area that Blinkware was involved in is called ANI, Artificial Narrow Intelligence. And this is where humans are training the machine, or humans is feeding the machines with data. So it started in 2016, I shared with you. We were just providing our system and algorithms with data sets, and we were learning data sets, and we had to keep training the system that, this is what you're looking for, multiple different data sets. And it's inefficient. We call it narrow, we call it basics of the AI. And there are many companies just at that point where you're still feeding data and you're still training the system. But we're seeing it gradually move towards artificial general intelligence, which is where the machine thinks like a human. Previously, it mirrors the human's intelligence, meaning that you still have to teach it what to do, but machine thinks like a human means that its ability to learn by itself, right? So we've already moved into new algorithms that has ability to identify and learn systems very, very fast by itself, or issues by itself. So I'll give you an idea. If there is a new defect that happens on manufacturing, or a new disease a virus that's being identified in certain images that we see, we don't need to train it with multiple thousands and hundreds and thousands of images, which is very normal for AI systems, because of the algorithms and the rich, the advancing rich algorithms that's out in the market, and also what's the new papers that's been written out. We are able to now teach the system much faster with less data sets. So the system is now starting to think like a human, rather than you teaching it to be like a human. So that creates much more efficient systems, and it creates much more faster outputs as a result, and less strain on the production and development time. So what takes about 4 to 5 months in the previous learning is only taking about less than a month now to be able to do faster AI technology. So that's what we call artificial general intelligence. And I put this, and this is where really Blinkware wants to move towards, and I see this in terms of where AI is going to move towards, is super intelligence. It's not going to be anywhere near the next 5 years. There's so much more work that needs to be done. It's where the machine surpasses the human. The machine is able to identify the problem for you. The machine is able to predict and tell you that if you don't do this, this is going to happen. If you don't fix your supply chain, you're going to have these issues in terms of this in the future. If you don't look at this DNA sequencing, in the future, you're going to have a huge pandemic that's going to happen. That's called predictive AI. And I don't think we're at that point of predictive AI, because there's not enough data and there's not enough input into the system to get us there. But Blinkware is starting to create a framework and architecture, and even our programming, to be able to have that predictive funnel in the future to do predictive AI. Is that going to remove people from jobs? No. In actual fact, we don't think AI is going to totally remove roles, and specific roles are always going to be still dependent on humans, but it's going to allow greater workflows. It's going to create a lot more automation for better, for our industry, better patient care, better workflow for radiologists and hospitals, better automation for manufacturing to be creating higher quality, less defects and less costs, costly errors that's going to be made. So ANI, AGI, ASI are the areas we see that's going to start really defining the future. And we're excited to see what's going to happen in AI in the future as well. We can't determine everything, but we are in Blinkware trying to create an ecosystem of AI specialists working with the industry to create greater impact, as I said, upon society. And hopefully we're going to see more lives changed. We're going to see greater efficiency in managing pandemics and wealth distribution amongst the unskilled. So that is my presentation for today. I hope you got something out of that. I hope that made a lot of sense to you. You can look for us at blinkware.ai for more information, or you can reach out to me. More than happy to have a word with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our program today. Our next guest is no stranger to the ecosystem. He's none other than Warren Liao, CEO of Inmagine, one of the world's leading creative technology companies, founded and based here in Malaysia. Warren, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you so much, MDEC, for giving me the opportunity to actually have a chat over here and to share a bit about our story.
It's always a pleasure to have you here. To kick off our discussion and to let the audience know a little bit more, could you tell us briefly how Inmagine started and how do your range of products fit into the market?
So no problem. Let me just start out with how we started. Right, we've been around for nearly 20 years. The company was founded by a husband and wife team, Andy and Stephanie Sit, out of here in KL. So we've been bootstrapped all the while. We started off as a premium image reseller for brands such as Getty Images and Corbis. About 10 years ago, we started a brand called 123RF that plays in the micro stock space. So if you had to Google for stock images across the years, you probably would have come across our watermark being put on top of a lot of images, right? And basically, 123RF against players like Shutterstock, iStock, and etc. And we were transitioning from a premium stock player into a micro stock player. And a few years back, about 3 or 4 years back, we started acquiring a few companies and started building more stuff. And with that, we started our journey to morph more into a complete creative ecosystem with tools as we began our transition into a SaaS-first business model. And if you have to check out our company profile, we've got tools such as Pixlr, pixlr.com, which is one of the world's largest online web-based editors. And we've got Designs.ai that uses AI for content creation. Right. What is the end goal of us as a group? The end goal is really to build a complete creative ecosystem, spanning content, the tools to community, right? And that's really how our products fit into the spectrum of creative technology. We have roughly about nearly 300 employees, of which 80% are based here in KL, and then the rest are scattered from all around the world. Our revenue base are mostly out of the country. Malaysia is less than 1% of revenue. About 30% are from the US, 40% from Europe, and another 30% from the rest of APAC.
Fantastic. So it looks like you're a really global company that's operating here with a global workforce, right, to support that as well. Which is perhaps, if I can deviate slightly and ask you this, given the current mode where a lot of companies are going into remote work, hybrid work as well, how do you manage such a global workforce right out of Malaysia?
I suppose, in our particular case, because we've been global in terms of outreach and global in terms of setup, right? Even though we do have an office here in Malaysia, where most of us are based, because we've always been comfortable working virtually, that in general, the transition has not been as difficult for us in comparison to many, let's say, brick and mortar businesses out there. Right? Most of the employees are equipped with a laptop, and we've been on Google suite of tools for years. In general, most of the staff are also hosted on the cloud using services from AWS as well as Google, etc. So in general, I think the transition has been relatively manageable. It's also due to the fact that we have been using the appropriate platforms and technology, as well as having the established processes even before the pandemic itself. Right? Of course, the transition has not been easy for some people, albeit on the minority side, but that is more to do with the environmental changes. Right? There are many others who prefer to have face-to-face interactions with people in the office. Some would not like to stay cooped up in the room, and claustrophobia or cabin fever is this is actually a real thing for people across the board, not just within our organization. And what we've done in order to minimize such risk is actually to institute better communication, more let's say, water cooler chats, albeit virtually, have more frequent check-ins, right? In order to compensate for the loss of face-to-face interactions within the office. However, I think, hopefully the situation with COVID is going to abate over time, but in terms of the permanent changes to the way we work, it's likely going to be a mix between working from home and going to the office for a few days a week. That is what I foresee to be the longer term goal and the longer term vision that we have.
Right. So it's good that you have all the existing processes in place already. Now, just to track back onto products and to touch a little bit in terms of product development in Inmagine, right? So you mentioned that you started out with stock images, and then now you're into the whole creative ecosystem, providing tools and so on. From that perspective, right? So as the CEO, what made you realize that you have a product idea that's worth betting the company on? How do you come to that conclusion?
I think there are perhaps 2 or 3 ways for you to validate it quite quickly, right? One is your internal gut feel, right? Looking at the internal data. Another one is looking at where the industry is heading, especially based on the performances of benchmarks and competitors, right? And you can sort of see and use it as a canary in the mine type of a sensor to know where the opportunities are and where the risks are. Right? And third, most important factor will be what the customers are telling us, either directly or indirectly. Right? Directly meaning that they give direct feedback saying, oh yeah, the product needs to change and this is what I need for my use cases. Indirectly, you can tell from their user behaviors when they use our platforms and our tools, or their click streams or the analytics data that comes associated with it. Right? And I think it's a combination of these 3 things, right? Internal experience and a sense of intuition, and this is where the senior management of any company will be paid to make the right calls. Right? Looking at where the external players and the competitors are moving or finding opportunities or finding risks, and then relying on the customers and the community and the users to really inform us on which areas to put our eggs into the basket. Right? And with that, this gives you an informed view on where the opportunities could be, and subsequently, there's also the second phase where you just need to get the ball rolling and test and validate. Because even if all the 3 factors at the first phase, we get a yes, you should go and pursue it. It's also subject to the resources that you have. It's subject to timing and luck. It is also subject to your quality of execution. Right. So that's the second phase, which is also very important. And then finally, you just have to give it some time for it to mature and really see whether the product or the service will have traction, right? That makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, it's like what I remember Steve Jobs saying, right? Great artists deliver, but having ideas and being able to execute it as well.
I think being an artist is important, but it's also important to be an engineer, right? And also being an accountant, right? And being an engineer means you can set up the process, right? Being an artist means that sometimes when there's uncertainty, you can try to find a way or find inspiration. Being an accountant means you try to do whatever you can with the resources that you have, or how can you corral resources together?
Yeah, right. Great stuff. Great stuff. And on that front, could you also share with us, how is Inmagine disrupting the creative industry with your tools and your products?
So what we noticed a couple of years back is how the whole industry is transitioning in terms of its value size of the pie from stock content to the journey of creating finished content itself. Right? And you can validate this very easily by just looking at the market capitalizations of the largest companies within both ends of the spectrum. Right? On one hand, you've got Shutterstock, which is our main competitor within the stock space, and they're worth about $4 billion. On the other hand, there's also Adobe, which is worth nearly $300 billion. Right? At one point in time, it was 80, 90, 100 times the size of Adobe, of Shutterstock. Right? And Adobe is worth that much because most revenues actually come from selling software to enable creators to create content. Right, some of the familiar products that you will probably have heard of will be Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, XD, InDesign, etc. And they are the industry benchmarks. Right? And with that, we realize, look, the value of it will only get less and less within the stock space because with the advent of technology, there's more and more supply coming into the market. So the question is, how can we actually use the content to complement the tools to aid the creative journey? And with that, we spent the last few years investing in our products. We acquired Pixel from Autodesk. We started investing massively into it, recruited a new team, add on a business model, and then it's growing strongly on a month-on-month basis. Right, we're actually number 2 in terms of traffic after Canva, and Canva is worth $50 billion. Right, and then we've got Designs.ai that uses AI to speed up content creation. We have this concept called agency as a service, and basically, you key in a few parameters and inputs, and you click a button, and then within 30 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes, you can get something done. Right, whether we're talking about banners or videos or logos. Right, so to answer your question in a shorter form, basically we're using technology, we're using AI, and we're using our experience of combining things together in order to make design more accessible to everyone, using the same mantra of making it smarter, faster, and easier. Right, that's our key strategy in terms of setting up the phase or the next phases of our evolution.
Right, that's great. And just now you touched on some of the evolution or even the revolutionary changes within the industry in the last 5 to 10 years, right? Would you be able to share with us what you foresee will happen in the next decade or so?
I think, number one, something like creativity will get democratized further and further and made accessible to more people. What I mean by that is, with the advent of technology, anybody can be a TikToker, anybody can be an Instagram influencer, right? And they create content at the level of professional quality, which previously you might have to rely on professionals to do. So this is an inevitable reality as more and more users within the communicator segment, which is the semi-casual or the casual users, will be able to create better and better content because technology helps to enable it and simplifies the whole creative journey. Right. So that's the first part, right? The democratization or access to creative tools. Number 2, there's going to be a movement more and more towards the freemium space ultimately, right? Right now, you might have people paying a few $1,000s, especially on the enterprise side for certain software, right? But I think over time, free alternatives, the open source alternatives will get better and better. And so therefore, it will lead to more competitiveness. And I think, on the other hand as well, you also spur more and more innovation in order to keep up. And to build on top of it, right? And then the third thing is that there will be a larger movement towards the ability to share and decentralize content, content licensing, content sharing. Personally and professionally within the group, right, and on an individual basis, we've been looking into the NFT space, right, the non-fungible token space, on how we can essentially tokenize the creations from the community and allow different business models to form on top of the crypto layer. And in our particular case, there's a pertinent use case because we are in the space of content licensing. So there's a logical flow in that particular direction.
Right, makes a lot of sense. Last question before we wrap up this session, and still keeping an eye on the future, but I'd like to zoom in a little bit closer and focus on Inmagine a little bit. I'm wondering if you're able to share with us, perhaps a peek under the hood, right, of what's in store for Inmagine in the next, say, 12 to 24 months, right? More acquisitions, more new products coming out, or perhaps an IPO, as you position yourself to be the Adobe of Southeast Asia, if I can say that.
Actually, we will hope to position ourselves to be the Adobe of Asia, right? Rather than just Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is still a small component of our revenue pie, but it's growing, right? It's bound to grow even further. I think the focus for the next 18 to 24 months is to make sure we can execute on our strategy, right? Of course, COVID has been trying times for our customers, right? And if you think about it, there's those who use content and creative tools, mostly agencies as well as small businesses and enterprises. Enterprises are less affected, but in general, the whole velocity of the economy has reduced because of COVID. Right? And with that, yes, digital spending is still increasing, but on the other hand, for publishing, for 90% of the businesses out there, right, they are struggling. So the key part is, how can we adapt to serve them better with our tools? So to answer your question, the next 18 to 24 months will really be focused on making sure we can improve on our products, execute our products and services in order to fulfill the market needs even better.
All right.
And with that, you should expect to see more automation, more AI tools, more crypto-driven solutions in order to define niches, right, which are forming within our industry and our segments.
Thanks, Warren. That's very enlightening. As always, a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hello everyone, my name is CF Fong. I'm the CEO of LGMS, a cybersecurity testing and digital forensic firm. We have been operating in Malaysia since 2005 and providing cybersecurity services to clients around the world right from Malaysia. Now, first of all, thank you MDEC for organizing the MDEC Malaysia Tech Month 2021. Now, this is a great initiative and I'm so glad to be part of the event. Now, let's talk about cybersecurity landscape today. Hackers today are working 24/7, 7 days a week. The majority of hacking activities today are conducted mainly by automated software. And what makes it worse is that hackers today do not distinguish their targets anymore. Now, whether we are a large financial institution or a small non-profit charity organizations, to the hackers, we're just a domain name or an IP address. Being proactively knowing our cybersecurity posture has become even more critical today. It is just as important as we need to know our body health status. The cyberspace is like the time that we are living in. The reality is, today we cannot just assume that we are wearing masks, we won't get contracted with COVID-19. Now, the same goes with cyber attacks. No matter how many layers of protection we apply to our business, the hackers will continue to attack us and finding all possible ways to exploit any weaknesses that we may have. Now, cybersecurity is a global issue. It is not confined to any geographical restrictions. As I always joke with my friends, the safest place today without hackers are the places that do not use computers and network. So by the way, what are the common misconceptions we usually hear? Now, some of the common misconceptions we hear are like, hackers won't be interested into us because we are not doing business online, or some may say we do not store customers' data. Why should we worry about hackers? Or, we have already installed antivirus onto our computer, so we should be all safe. Well, the reality is this. If we are even using email online, as simple as just using email online, we are already exposing ourselves to cyber attacks already, whether we like it or not. We are now the situation is that we are now in a battlefield, right? So what is the outlook of the cyberspace in the next 5 to 10 years? Now, the digital transformation is happening rapidly around us. Our critical infrastructures like healthcare, transportation, financial services, manufacturing, telecommunications, education, etc. are all digitalized and becoming even more interconnected. Now, many of these infrastructures have connections extended from the traditional silo-based setup and converging into the open internet to meet today's business requirements. Now, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will expect our world to be surrounded by IoT devices and internet-enabled equipment. Our daily life will become much more dependent on these devices. We will be living in a house with smart home appliances such as internet-connected TV, internet-connected refrigerator, CCTV systems, smart door locks, and even more. Our lifestyle are being digitalized. whether we realize it or not, face by face, or our privacy eroding slowly into the space. However, cybersecurity is more than just data privacy. Now, even until now, we would never think of cyber attacks can be fatal. Now, just imagine this. While hackers hack into a hospital, despite of just stealing sensitive medical data, the hackers manipulate the patient's data. For example, randomly changing the blood type of the patients from one type to another. Now, the consequences of such a simple cyber attack and data manipulation can be disastrous and fatal. Let's say another example. While we are driving on our internet or 5G connected cars, hackers hack into the CPU of the car, right? And then they can easily take control of our accelerator and brake and causing accidents. And our lives will be in jeopardy. Now, these are all possible scenarios. How are we going to prepare ourselves against these malicious attacks? Now, there's a very important thing I would like to share with everyone. We need to realize that cybersecurity is no longer a proprietary subject among the financial institutions. As long as we are online, we are a target. We are vulnerable. If we are running a business, regardless of our size, we need to face an infinite number of unforgiving cyber attacks. And you hear it right. Cyber attacks today are very unforgiving, right? It can simply wipe out a business just because we are not ready. We do not have enough backups. So the hackers today are ruthless. The key to cyberspace survival is visibility. Now, we need to know how secure, how vulnerable we are first, before we even know what to protect. So what do hackers know about us? We need to ask more questions like, are we emitting too much unnecessary information to the outside world? Right? And are the hackers talking about us in the dark web? Do we have any data leak into the dark web? So there's a lot of questions that we need to address. Hence, LGMS is here to address the demand for visibility. We proactively perform cybersecurity scanning and penetration testing for our clients' appliances, client applications, servers, infrastructure to help our client to establish clear visibility and to understand their asset even more clearer. Now, with clear visibility, we can better defend and enhance the protection of our digital asset. As I mentioned earlier, we can only defend only when we know where we are, right? We can only defend only when we know when we realize how secure or how vulnerable, which are the areas that require our attention. So what is penetration testing and vulnerability assessment? So let's first explain what is vulnerability assessment. Vulnerability assessment is an exercise for us to test and evaluate the security of our infrastructure or our servers or our applications. We will be simulating what the hackers would normally do to find possible loopholes of our systems by performing a scan. We try to discover what are the weaknesses of our system or weaknesses of our infrastructure. Now, once we have identified the weaknesses, the loopholes of our infrastructure or our applications, we'll document down the loopholes and findings. And with that, we will further provide recommendations for customers to continue by following the following the advice and recommendations. They'll continue to enhance and strengthen the security of their systems or their applications. Now, so what is penetration testing? If we take the example of vulnerability assessment and make it a step further, right? So instead of just identifying weaknesses and document down the weaknesses, we further go and exploit the weaknesses. We take advantage of these weaknesses and penetrate into the system. And this entire exercise is what we call penetration testing. Now, penetration testing in comparison with vulnerability assessment is more intrusive. Of course, when we have a more intrusive exercise, it gives us more visibility, it gives us more knowledge about the in-depth of the security of a system. So both vulnerability assessment and penetration testing are a critical component for us to establish the knowledge about how secure or how vulnerable our systems or our applications are. Now, furthermore, we should even start asking ourselves too, how secure are our partners and suppliers? Because our suppliers are compromised or hacked, we will be affected too. So we are also providing a proactive cybersecurity risk rating assessment, monitoring alert services for our customers. and using an easy to understand grading standards from grade A, B, C to F, we can let our client know how secure is their own company digital exposure and even their partners' security risk rating. So please allow me to summarize the points that I have for today. Now, point number 1, visibility. We shall always be proactive to know our current cybersecurity posture, to perform vulnerability assessment, penetration testing on our business infrastructure. Point number 2 is also goes back to visibility. We need to know our third-party risks, monitor their cybersecurity risk rating, get alerted when our third-party cybersecurity score changes. Performing health check on our business infrastructure and digital assets are very important today. So let's do it now before the bad guys do it for us. Now, once again, I am CF Fong from LGMS. If you need more information, please feel free to visit our virtual booth. We're looking forward to meet you soon. Thank you very much again to MDEC, and thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Hi everyone, welcome to Malaysian Tech Month 2021. My name is Hon Wai Sim from MDEC Innovations. It's great to have all of you here. Today I'm going to talk about a topic related to data, and specifically the entire topic name is called IoT and data, which we think is going to be the key to future innovations. So before that, let me jump straight to my screen sharing, and give me a sec on that. Yep, so there are we. I think we have the screen up, and again, today's topic is about IoT and data. So we'll talk about how this critical area that we have at this moment will be the key to future innovations. So of course, it will be good for me to have a bit of a snapshot on what the company is doing, the background of MDEC Innovations. To those who are viewing this from outside of Malaysia, you may not be too familiar with the tech industry of our Malaysian country, Malaysia country, and Southeast Asia as a whole. So of course, MDEC Innovation, we are a quick and fast-growing tech company focusing on deep tech area, on IoT and digital twin system. We have a digital business platform that we are running at this moment, which we call it the Linen Laundry Management System. We're covering a few areas, a few countries like Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. We do have also digital retail platform in south of China, in Hong Kong and Zhuhai area. Of course, we will have been also involved quite extensively in fintech universal payment gateway. We organize and offer switching and enablement for fintech e-wallet issuers. And we do have a bit of subsidiaries here, and of course an associate company too. We supply physical security products. We do off-grid PV renewable energy, and we actually have an RFID inlay and label manufacturing in Malacca. It's about 2 hours drive from KL. So the company has been growing pretty fast. We have surpassed about R1 billion export sales to date. That's about approximately $300 billion of export sales. Export only, not just only local sales. So that is a pretty remarkable achievement that we are pretty proud of. And of course, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we do have quite some intellectual properties that we have registered, global presence in multiple countries and regions, especially Far East, and a little bit of coverage in Africa as well. And not to forget Australia. I suppose there will be a lot of Australia so-called visitors that will be actually looking into this Malaysian Tech Month, and also Australia Game Connects. And of course, we do have some groundbreaking technology and solutions. We're not going to talk too much about that. It's a quick snapshot on what we are doing on this slide. So I just want to dive down what data are used for. I think the most critical component is we need to acknowledge that data are mostly used for a lot of areas whereby optimizing equipment effectiveness, OEE, is part of them, especially by manufacturers. We use data for trend analysis. Of course, we mine the data and put in some AI algorithms to do some prediction, and of course, ultimately, we want to use data for sustainable innovations for the future. Of course, we have to realize that almost all businesses fail because of oversight in data management. So of course, we do have situation of data security, data breach, device failure, unavailability of device to produce the right amount of data or the quality data. We do have communication issues that resulted data to be inaccurate or actually totally break down. And of course, we have cloud sizing issue whereby potentially there will be outages to servers and etc. So this is the situation whereby things start to go outright. And of course, what we want to actually look at is not only how we manage the data, where the data sources are. I think first and foremost, there are at this moment, at this age, we're talking about 2021 now, there are tons of visualization tools that can be adopted, as simple as your dashboard, which will actually telling you, percentages or numbers in charts and other form of visualizations. That I think it can also go down to 3D mapping. So today, tools are very, very powerful. But what are the qualitative aspect of the data that we're talking about? So that is where we find that a lot of businesses are not maximizing the potential because of the quality of data is not there. And that is why I think that IoT plays a very important role on making sure the data is of the highest quality. So of course, we always look from the perspective whereby we dive straight down into the business to look into areas that you can actually digitalize your environment, your movement, your basically anything that is analog that you have not been able to tap. This is where you need to start to look into. I think areas like status, movement, aging, conditions, these are the things that can be looked into and digitized. There'll be areas like inputs and outputs of your production of your businesses, cycles, revolutions, things are digitized. Of course, there are areas like raw data, raw materials, semi-finished, finished goods. These are the things that we need to look into in order to digitize. Of course, you look at the bottom of the screen, we have introduced some services and solutions over the past years to different industries like retail. We have solutions on trolley management, with solutions on stock and warehouse management, with solutions on ESL, electronic shelf labels that can be actually attached to racks, to do some price updates. We have connected healthcare to manage assets and movement of patients. We have building and facility management solution. We have linen and laundry management using linen-based RFID tag, and also we have work in progress whereby we go down and actually tap manufacturing data from the machineries, So these are the things that we can always go and dive down. I think this is very important whereby when you have all these data, which are quality, we're not actually depending on data entry clerks to key in the data. So this will be the key areas that you can look to in order to automate your data collection at the qualitative perspective. So that is the first and foremost perspective that we look into. Of course, not to forget, we do have a lot of movement that we can trace or we need to trace from workforce perspective. I think we're not looking into so-called privacy kind of so-called, getting involved in putting our nose into their private affairs, but it's more towards solutions related to well-being of the workforce, and also putting deep learning and occupational health and diseases, that we think that is essential. So that is where we think worker safety and also OSHA compliance is also ultimately very important. Of course, I think we have a situation now whereby we get into a COVID situation, but by social distancing, social contract is going to be a very important aspect for us to determine whether there are potentially situations that can actually turn the business upside down. So I think we have in the past introduced solutions for school management by kids are being actually monitored, especially from safety perspective. And also we've introduced WeCare, for workforce management, especially field workers, they can actually be detected. Of course, when you have workers and also businesses data that can be tapped, I think we look into how we need to actually look into in managing data. So I think that is a perspective whereby data can be overwhelming, and if there is no right way to manage data, you're basically flooded with a lot of data that you don't know how to use. I think a lot of organizations are facing this very difficult situation whereby they're not lack of data, but they just do not know how to manage that. So of course, we look into areas whereby there are things that we can actually perform, in terms of data governance and data modeling. And of course, we need to have data integration, to collate data from IoT. We put in big data and AI computation and also visualization tools. And of course, knowingly, I think we are looking into an area whereby we are twinning, what is happening in our business, which indirectly we get ourselves into digital twin. So that is where we are looking at when we have IoT and data work together. So the future will be enabling you to look into a very important aspect of technology nowadays, whereby digital twin, that can actually duplicate and actually look into a representation of your physical situation of your business, that you can actually do a lot of try and error. You can actually do a lot of simulation on how the business should actually be conducted and run. So of course, with this digital twin solutions, through the input of IoT and data, there will be areas whereby everyone needs to look into, especially in terms of massaging the data. Data from IoT device will be more reliable. Of course, definitely we're not actually looking into having people to produce data through data entry. I think that is a pretty old school kind of angle. And with reliable data, I think a lot of data analysts will be able to look into propensity model, which is more consistent and highly accurate. I think that is where we are looking from, with digital twin. This is actually true experiences of with companies struggling because of poor data, people who are data hoarding, and of course there are outdated technologies that will not be able to produce the right amount or right quality of data. And of course there are statistics, produced by IBM and Gartner talking about, people who do not have the right way to manage the data will result in losses in business up to 3.1 trillion, 15% of revenue loss, due to bad data. And then of course we do have situation whereby 40% of the time spent by analysts is actually to clean data, so that is very important. And of course, that will translate to some revenue loss and operating expenses being shoot up. So of course, with IoT and data, I think we are looking into potentially minimizing all this impact, whereby you need to look into your data physically, you need to clean your data. No, I think that is all the parts that we're talking about, because IoT device is supposed to actually generate the right information and the right quality data that all businesses are looking at. Right. So of course, with IoT and data, what we feel that it makes digital twin easier. I think if everyone who have actually had opportunity to read up about digital twin, this digital twin is not something that is extraordinary new that exists in our environment. I think in the past we have talked about doing simulations on how businesses should run differently, compared to the physical representation that they have existingly, so that they can actually do the kind of modeling and prediction, how they can actually improvise the situation. But of course, often a lot of these initiatives are actually being hindered by accuracy of data, and quality of data is questionable. So I think with the kind of devices that MDT has looked into historically in the past, we have actually been able to produce a lot of data that is relevant to any specific industry. For example, I think we're pretty strong in manufacturing, and there are areas whereby we look into the environmental monitoring, energy monitoring, stock and logistics, and we do the simulation on a software modeling, whereby we will be able to tell the manufacturing plant, how different, can the business be being conducted. So that is how we believe, and we strongly believe, that IoT and data makes digital twin easier, right? And of course, there are many success stories implemented by MDT in terms of the usage of IoT and data. So this is the part whereby I want to share what are the areas that we have successfully achieved. I think if we look into this chart, highly related to Industry 4.0 and also digital twin. And we have actually looked into tracing more than 10,000 workforce, using RFID and also using AI cameras, on their movement. And then, of course, we have situation whereby we have 100% of cement distribution is measured and automated. One of our clients in Malaysia, one of the biggest, they are the biggest, in fact, cement makers and producers in Malaysia. And then we have also talked about, looking into laundry and linen, whereby more than 500,000 of pieces of linens have been washed and distributed and used and tracked. So these are the areas that we have actually been doing. And of course, not to forget, we are pretty good at looking into retrofitting tags, into production machine, and we have converted more than 1,500 production lines into digital. So some of these quick case studies that I can share would be like in a semiconductor environment, we have retrofitted sensors whereby things start to actually produce relevant data for the ERP to consume. And then we have also storages, that actually be connectable. So that is also very important, and it's often overlooked because storage, is something that is tend to be too common, and it's not really important to a lot of people's perspective. But when you have things, going wrong, going down south, then you have all of these issues coming, where the materials are. And then, of course, we do have raw materials connectable as well, not only the storages. So what are being fed into the machine, what are being produced, so these are the things that we look into. And of course, notably, Freescale Semiconductor and NXP Semiconductor, these are Fortune 500 companies, are one of the beneficiary of this exercise, whereby they've started to get their machines connected as early as 2012. So it's talking about almost 10 years ago. Right. So of course, we do have healthcare customers that look into basically managing their FAMs and BAMs, facility engineering and biomedical engineering assets, especially when we talk about movement of biomedical assets like defibrillators, ultrasound, especially nowadays when we have a COVID situation whereby assets has to be the so-called properly track and trace, maintained, so that, you can always highly depending on them, when you need to use it, during the critical and emergency situation. Of course, there are linens that we have looked into to track and trace in terms of washing by how many tons and how many kgs. So that is something that we've done before locally in some hospitals in Malaysia. And we recently also have extended our solution to Thailand and actually Indonesia too. All right, so then this is one of the earliest adopter in terms of trying to get the older and also existing plant to become digitized. So this is by YTL Group, whereby YTL Cement started to look into this beginning of 2006 and 2007. So they have a lot of legacy system which are not connectable. So now, slowly and gradually over the past 13 years, they have actually transformed many of their plants to become digital by retrofitting sensors, and IoT technologies to produce the right amount of data. And of course, we have also other semiconductor industry, especially in workforce management. We have Infineon and Boeing, one of the plants in Malaysia, manufacturing RFID, to actually look into movement of people, movement of workforce within the plant. So these are some of the key areas that how IoT and data has helped a lot of manufacturing plant and also other businesses, to actually gain valuable amount of information from IoT devices. And of course, not only us, there are also other digital twin implementations that have been started and implemented in the past. I think most notably, we have GE, which has been doing this since 2016. They are one of the early adopters of this technology, and looking at now managing more than 1.2 million digital twin of physical assets that they have in their plant. Of For Chevron, oil and gas company, also made a huge investment in digital twin. They're using technology to predict maintenance and problems in oil fields. Of course, with that, you need a lot of sensors to be able to pump data for their simulation. This is again why we talk about IoT and data is so important for their simulation. And of course, I think for the sporting fans, especially Formula One, I think a lot of Formula One teams are using digital twin solution in order to simulate how their race car performs. I think we all know that to those who follow the sport, Formula One car can have hundreds or thousands of sensors that will produce information to the pit. And they will do a lot of simulation to actually how they can actually, supposed to do the setup depending on the weather environment, depending on the temperature of the track, depending on, the competitors as well. So this is actually very unique in the Formula One sports. And of course, other digital twin implementation, we have like Boeing, one of the early adopters as well. Now all their manufacturing plants producing airplanes are using digital twin asset development model. I think that is one of the areas they want to look into, simulating how their aircraft will be able to perform over the life cycle of their airframe. So that's one area that Boeing is looking into or have looked into. Tesla Motors, I think something that is very popular in the Western world, in the States and the European countries. I think the fact that every single car has a digital twin is something that is very unique and something that Tesla put a lot of initiatives into that. And of course, we all know that the modern day cars, whether it's coming from the Tesla or the other European brand marquees, I think they're all loaded with tons of sensors that be able to produce relevant data for their inspection and service perspective. And of course, not to forget Bosch, German-based company, are also using a lot of sensor-driven solution in order to drive digital twin. So that way they will have production lines running at 100% efficiency. So I think all in all, we have seen a lot of case studies and precedents whereby how important IoT and data is, and how IoT and data will be able to improve businesses. I think it's all boils down to whether all of us will have the audacity to actually look into, taking the leap of faith, to look into transforming businesses by putting in relevant IoT devices to capture data, for the betterment of the business. Of course, there will be some word of caution. Of course, IoT will capture and deliver a lot of data. So this is a perspective whereby I would like people to take a look. Potentially we can produce tons of data, in terms of measurement, computer measurement, up to prontobytes of data, coming from IoT system. So there will be right tools, right solutions, and right algorithm needed to be implemented in order to make sure certain data will be filtered, will be actually processed before you can actually use it as information. So that is one area that a part of the so-called, the implication of using or implementing IoT. And of course, talk about some takeaway before we end this session. How many of us are maximizing the potential? I think we have also some statistics, this is coming from the Contier. They have actually looked into surveys whereby how many people have actually looked into using technology in their business, especially digital transformation. I think we all realize that there are not many people who have started doing this. There's only 22% of those so-called surveyed, have actually started some form of digital solution, and the rest are either still thinking or still discussing, and not really have any plans moving forward, and etc. and etc. So I think that is something that is appalling. I think we are talking about 2021 now. With this session, I hope that it gives everyone a clear idea, how IoT and data can be beneficial. And to those who want to actually know more about what could be actually improved or actually can be done differently, to your businesses, we do have a virtual booth. Do actually spend some time, drop by, leave some message or questions, if you have any. will get back to you with information, with calls, to take you through, what are the things that MDT can actually do differently, to help your organization. So I think with that, that is my last slide, and I would like to thank everyone to spend 15 minutes, to actually, listen to this presentation. I wish all of you a good day, and hopefully with this session, everyone is inspired to look into changes, to implement IoT, to have more quality data, and ultimately look into adopting digital twin, in your businesses. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone for that great session and all the presentations. Remember to drop by the virtual booth to find out more. With that, we have concluded the first half of day 4 of the Digital Disruptors Week here at the Malaysia Tech Month 2021. We'll now take a break from our sessions and resume later at 2 p.m. See you then.